We're doing a podcast on the game we played yesterday. It's the one where the important one where the thing, you know what? Who cares? This is the ArsenalVision post-match podcast. My name's Elliot Smith, Blackman, Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Yeah, I am committed to caring about this game as much as the Arsenal players cared about this Palace game, which is to say, not enough to get it over the line. I do want to let you know, Julien Laurent of ESPN, a man very closely associated with PSG and Arsenal, so you could look at it as he is going to have heartbreak no matter what happens in the semifinal, or elation no matter what happens in the semifinal. I had the chance to talk to him about the upcoming semifinal, and he gave us the sort of PSG perspective. So I will tell you, first of all, if you're someone who doesn't like to hear people say nice things about our opposition and say that they may have a chance to beat us, then I wouldn't listen to it. But I think if you want to hear how the PSG world is thinking about the tie and how they think about where they're at right now in their development, it's a fantastic interview. I was going to attach it to this episode, but then I thought, you know what, like it's a robust enough episode on its own at 45-minute runtime to stand alone. So I'm going to be putting that out just a little bit later today, and you can check that out. We have a Power Rankings episode for patrons tomorrow. Remember, for the rest of this month, we've given quite a lot away already to the fundraiser, and if you use code AVP, you can get the half off the first month of your Patreon. And by the way, first month, that doesn't mean like, hey, the 6 remaining days of April. It's the next 30 days. So you'll get our instant reactions to the wins over PSG at the Emirates and at the Parc des Princes. So you don't want to miss that. The fundraiser is wrapping up. I know you've had to hear about it all, all this month, and you've wanted to hear about the football. And so I do thank you for bearing with me on that. But Kim Little had her say on the fundraiser, and I want to just let you hear what she had to say now. And thanks to Kim for the words of encouragement we've heard from Martin Odegaard this month. As a reminder, we are drawing the PSG club level ticket and the VIP Bournemouth ticket this weekend. So through tomorrow, you have a chance to give and to be entered to win. Let's cross the £200,000 mark. If we do that, once the £150,000 matching donation goes in, we'll have hit £350,000 raised for children in Zaire refugee camp. And at a time when cynicism is rampant and there's cause for maybe a bit of pessimism about certain things in the world, this is a shining light of a reminder of the goodness of people. And I can't say more how appreciative and thankful I am for you and for this community. So thank you for that. Okay, 2 minutes, 39 seconds. That's a world record for me. Here with me now is Clive. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
And Tim. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
I mean, that's a quick one. I guess it's longer if you factor in how long Kim spoke, but I only spoke for 2 minutes and 45 seconds. So I feel like that's a good one. Clive, let's get a heat check here. You were at the game last night. This is a tricky one. You can never say the Premier League doesn't matter, but that's not where everybody's heads are. And I would submit that it's not where the players' heads were. Where was your head? Where is the emotion here? What is the environment? How tricky do you think it is right now, these Premier League fixtures, especially at home, where it just feels like everybody's aware that there are bigger fish to fry?
Yeah, the whole Madrid experience has even made these games even more challenging, shall we say? Because, mate, once you've had steak, you don't want to go back to corned beef. Do you know what I mean? And that's how it feels. And it's nothing you can do about it.
I'll take either, by the way, just so we're clear. I'll take a corned beef sandwich, but please carry on.
You just can't. You can't go back, right? And we all know there's a nice piece of fillet waiting for us next week. And that's it. And it's very challenging. And we go because you support your club, right? You support your team, and you're going there, but you're going there on half power, and that's the truth. As a fan, that's the truth. And then you look at the players, and I've seen a few things today, listened to a few shows. Everyone's getting to conclusions around certain players. Just stop it, will you? Stop it, honestly. Almost every single player, apart from maybe one, had another game in their mind. And there was one player, it's probably been a bit harsh, but one player playing at their maximum, and the others looked distracted on occasions. Yeah. And were trying to extract the minimum amount of effort required for a one-goal win. That's what they're trying to do. And then Palace brought on a monster, and he scored a goal late in the game, and we get another draw, right? So, honestly, for people who are trying to get conclusive about certain plays, just don't. This isn't the real Arsenal, and it was a pretty average performance. And I will say, I'll give Palace a lot of credit, Elliot, because they've also got a big game at the weekend. And they came and did really well. And honestly, structurally, mate, I could see them. I could feel their presence. And yeah, not a good time to meet Palace. End season as well. And they deserve a lot of credit. One of the best teams I've seen come to the Emirates.
Yeah, I think they were loose in the sense that it seemed like they were out there having fun trying things. We were loose in the sense that it seemed like we were sloppy, if that makes mistakes, right? Like I think the tension was off of them so they could kind of play their football. The tension was off of us. But I think for us, when your reputation is the best out of possession team in world football, those characteristics, our shape, our recovery, the things that Sander Berge was saying, right? The things that Ola Aina were saying, oh, it's like someone's remote controlling them from the 50th row. Those are the kind of things that require intensity of focus. They're not just about talent, right? The talent stuff was there. We still saw some of the talent stuff on show, but the intensity of focus stuff was not. Tim, I guess it is worth just a quick mention for the lineup because it gives us a chance to do what I do best, which is flip out. No Mikel Merino. And the word afterwards is a doubt for Tuesday. I want to be clear. I don't think he's a doubt for Tuesday.
Yeah, no.
I'm going to say there's no chance he misses the game because in this season, what are the likelihood that we lost someone to injury in a major fixture? Well, when has that ever happened? But all kidding aside, your reaction to that news in particular, and maybe any other lineup stuff, because this was a tricky one for Mikel. We don't play again till PSG. It's a week. You don't want to rest your players and have them go 10 days in April without playing. That's not good for the rhythm, but you can't play them all. But you also want to keep some legs fresh. So I think it's a really tricky lineup choice for him. I'm curious what you thought of Merino's absence and the lineup decisions in general.
Yeah, Merino's absence from the squad, I didn't actually know about till halftime. And this is one of the things, I know I've said this before, but this is one of the things I think nowadays that differs the most when you're at the stadium, which I'm trying not to say with like an air of superiority or anything, but looking at the lineup is something you do very briefly in the pub before, and then you put your phone away and you go back to talking. And so I was like, okay, Merino not in the starting lineup, but I thought he'd be on the bench. And to be honest, I didn't think that much of it. I was like, well, I suppose he has played a lot of football recently. He's played every single game for the last couple of months. Maybe that makes some sense. We're pretty set with Merino, and we probably know Trossard's going to play up front against PSG. So I didn't actually think that much of it. And initially I thought, oh, we'll probably do some game sharing in there. It'll probably be, Merino might come in for Rice on 60 minutes or something. So like the immediacy of that didn't hit me at all because I didn't know till half time, and I got to look at my phone and I could see it. So, yeah, I'm with you. I was more where my eye was much more trained with Saka because I thought he was the only one where I thought there's a balance to strike there between we want to get him ready, we want to get him up to his maximum, but at the same time he got a painful kick at the weekend, and if that's still, I imagine it still hurts at the very least. I was reasonably confident that Palace, given their own situation, weren't going to make any tackles like that because none of their players wanted to get suspended for their game this weekend. So that was really where my eye was. I think that was the only selection. That and will it be Partey? Will he come back in? Like those were the only two things I was really looking at. But obviously now we know that Partey came back in because Merino wasn't available. But I'm with you. I would be utterly shocked and surprised if Merino didn't start the next game. And my no information to back this up, but my spidey senses very much say minor, let's not risk him type thing.
Yeah, and even if he does come back in, Leo's going to play center forward is my thought. So we'll talk about Leo's performance and the relevance of that in a bit. We're obviously going to look at this through a lens of the PSG tie at some level. But look, Clive, if we've learned anything this season, because of Merino, because of Kai Havertz last season, because of Jakub Kiwior, it's that you don't write players off. You can be critical of their performances, but you keep an open mind. But I'm not going to do that because I just don't give a shit. I'm going to write Raheem Sterling off. I'm going to say Raheem Sterling's Arsenal career maybe isn't going to live up to what we hoped it would be. His short flame out of a loan has not gone as we hope. And while I've been on this podcast apologizing to players before, I'm going to draw a line into this one and say I don't think I'll be on this podcast apologizing to Raheem Sterling. But all kidding aside, I am sort of curious where we are with Ethan Nwaneri and his development. He broke out. He looked like a star. He's had to take a back seat a little bit. He's going through the growing pains of someone who, let's remember, is about a year younger than Miles Lewis-Skelly. So whatever we think Miles Lewis-Skelly is doing, Ethan's even younger still and learning his trade. And so I understand that it has to be managed, but I do think if you're going to look at games like this one where the jeopardy is relatively low and you don't want to start Bukayo Saka, why not just start the guy who is your future? I'm curious what you thought of Sterling starting and Ethan not starting, and if you have any strong opinions on that either way.
Well, I'm not letting you get past the Kiwior thing so easily, right?
I apologize to Kiwior. I publicly flogged myself. He was a man of the match in this game. He looks like Paolo Maldini. What do you want me to say?
He was, seriously though, it just showed he literally was our best player. I mean, seriously though, yes. Really, really good. It's so interesting to watch. On Ethan.
By the way, hugely helpful for him to play this game at an intense, high quality level, because for him, every good performance under his belt is more confidence for what he's got ahead of him. Sorry.
Yeah, he feels part of the group now, and he's playing like it. And when other people are dropping away, he decided to step up. And one time he did step up. I didn't want him to, but let's not worry about that. He was still fine. So going back to Raheem, I don't think you'll be apologising on that one, Elliot. I think you're safe. I think you're safe. There is a physical, technical, psychological part of a player, and I don't think he's a physical, technical, or psychological fit for our football team. And it's quite clear to me, and so you'll be safe there, mate. And if we go down together, we go down together on that one, because I stand with you. And the reason why Ethan didn't play is because he is our future. And they understand where he is physically in his development. And he's not in the same place as Miles. And his body is different and it needs to adjust. And we need to be brave to not look at the short term and make sure we protect somebody who's an explosive, sprinting, fast-footed athlete while he's growing. And I think that's really important, because you get a better adult if you look after people in this period. If you look at the body types of, say, a Miles or even a Saka, they just matured. Bang, there you go. Mahogany, teak, just there, right? Fully chiseled. But if you look back at a picture of Bukayo when he was 18, it's not like he is now. Whereas Miles is different. This is a different breed. And Ethan is same age, just about, a bit younger. Emotionally younger, just younger. And that's development. And we have to, just because they're doing spectacular things, one's doing it maybe at the extremities where his body is, and the other one is just doing it without even knowing he's doing it. And so protect the future. It's very important. 10 years building, not to blow it in against Crystal Palace at home and do something stupid. I think we're learning lessons. I think it's really, really good. Really, really good. Even the fact that Saka didn't start in this game was really good. I think back to a game-changing moment or season-changing moment for me with Brighton at home. Not just the sending off, but the injury Ødegaard got in that game. He went off to international duty, and we all knew he was troubled. He came off in that game. The very next game, we lost him. And the season lost momentum and changed direction. Not only disciplinary-wise, that game triggered something, but injury-wise, that game triggered something. So a simple Saturday, 3:00 home game when the sun is shining was one of the major turning points in our season, because we didn't manage those moments very, very well. And I'm glad that we're learning. We're taking our time with certain people, making sure Saka didn't start this game, and making sure we look after Ethan's body going forward.
Yeah. I think there's a number of things in this game that weren't great that I'm not super concerned about, for reasons that I think we'll come to, just in terms of focus and effort. I'm going to put one thing ahead of that, a couple of positive things ahead of that before we do that, because I think that's a more fun way to discuss the game, which is simply, I think we know what we have in most of the players that are going to be playing PSG in terms of what their regular level is at this moment. The two players that we maybe want to see something from to feel okay about that home leg would be Kiwior, who's still sort of the question mark of what is his level and will he stand up at this level. And then the other one is Leo, playing center forward, who hasn't had a great goal return this season and sometimes hasn't looked super confident in front of goal. Between the Ipswich game and this game, I think Leo has shown some of his best form for us. And obviously, Kiwior was a man of the match candidate in this game, took his chance beautifully with the header. I think defensively flawless is slightly overstating it. To Clive's point, there was the one step-up moment that actually reminded me a little of the way Liverpool got their goal, where there was a bit of a confusion between Miles Lewis-Skelly and Kiwior in terms of, Miles jumped and Kiwior should have dropped and didn't. Anyway, so there's that. But setting that aside, I think that their form generally, Kiwior in this game, and maybe we focus on Leo since Clive talked Kiwior a bit, I think that's really encouraging because Leo is going to, I think assuming Merino is starting, is going to play center forward in the first leg. So what do you think of Leo's performance? He's got that sort of angry resolve to his game when he's cooking right now, where he seems to really have a good feel for playing in that pocket of space. He was drifting out to the right, all the way to the right. So Saka could tuck in more, or Sterling could tuck in more. He had really interesting positioning and he took his goal well. So I think that's an encouraging sign from this game.
Yeah, it definitely is. And yeah, I really noticed the kind of drifting out to the right stuff. And against Ipswich as well, you look at, is it the second goal? And in that game, he picks that Saliba pass up like on the halfway line out on the right. And obviously that gives more freedom to Saka. And I think, Clive there talking about lessons learned. Do you remember it was a year ago actually when Kiwior came in at left back? And initially we were asking him to invert and he clearly wasn't comfortable doing it. And Arteta said afterwards, I think he basically said that's a learning point, like not to try to make players do things that are uncomfortable for them. So it's really interesting that we have this almost completely different plan for Trossard. Like we're not asking him to be Merino, basically. It's almost a bit more. We were doing this with Havertz quite a bit.
Yeah, Kai. Yeah.
Really pulling him out to the right wing. And I suspect that's about getting Saka into more of those goal-scoring positions. But it's just really good that we had that plan ready to go in terms of, right, Leo's got to play up front. He's not going to play it like Merino. We can't ask him to do that, which is potentially maybe why it didn't work at Leicester that time, because that was the first thing Arteta did, was try Trossard up front against Leicester, and you couldn't find him with a torch, and I think that's because we were still trying to use him as that fixed point. And so you've got to assume that Arsenal have had this in their back pocket maybe for a little while. So obviously they've worked on making Merino like the emergency striker, but in the background, like I don't believe they just worked on this after Thomas Partey got booked in the Bernabeu. I believe that they would have worked on this a little bit before as a bit of a plan B, because Havertz got injured, the beginning of February. They must have known that even if it's going to be Merino up front, he's not going to be able to play every single minute of every single game. Very, very unlikely. So we're going to have this. So, but yeah, the way Trossard's done it, and Trossard was a sub in both legs against Real Madrid, and I'm certain that would have hurt him. He got on in both games, but I'm certain, particularly I think we know a bit more about him as a character as well, that he'll be bugged by that. He'll be like, those were probably the two biggest nights the club's had since I arrived, and I was a bit peripheral in both of them. But there's another one coming up, and I want to make damn sure I'm not this time around. It would be really interesting, actually, to see how things kind of continue to unfold when Merino is available again, because we were doing that every minute we could. So I wonder now whether we switch between them a little bit, whether whether we have recourse to make substitutions and maybe put Merino back into midfield. I guess a lot of that will be governed by whether we advance in the Champions League as well, because then the league games, I think they'll really go into the background if we've got a final coming up, albeit we'll have Liverpool and Newcastle, which will be big games, and I hope that they bring a sort of intensity that perhaps playing Brentford, Everton and Crystal Palace just hasn't brought for us. But Yeah, I think good on the coach for having that kind of plan B, but yeah, really good on Trossard as well, because he's executing, and honestly, like, it stands to reason he should be a good centre forward, because he's just really good at shooting off both feet. And the goal he gets, that's exactly what happens. Like, he's not afraid to shift onto his left and get that kind of scrappy striker's goal. A bit like I said about Merino after Fulham, just getting those shots off in the area. And perhaps that's where those options perhaps maybe have something over Havertz. Perhaps we don't see that enough from Havertz, that kind of, the porridge doesn't always have to be just right,
Yeah, it's interesting with the center forward position, because I think people are upset, rightly, justifiably, that we didn't find a forward to add in the January window. But if we add a forward in the January window, we almost certainly don't rediscover Merino. He probably doesn't play. Rice stays playing at 8, and the new forward starts playing at center forward. And I sort of wonder, does anyone think we would be substantially better if we had never rediscovered Merino and then instead added a Marcus Rashford, for example? Know what I mean? It is crazy, but like, we could have spent 10 million pounds loaning Matisse Tell. Would you rather have Matisse Tell right now than Mikel Merino at center forward? Of course not. So it is funny how football works, because you think you're so smart and you totally get it. And then Mikel Merino becomes the number 9 of your dreams and plays the Kai role as well, or better than Kai at times. And suddenly you're saying maybe holding fire was okay. Like, it's funny, Clive, how football will surprise you. But I was thinking about that. I'm not sure there was a move we would have made in January that would have been better than the discovery of Mikel Merino.
Yeah, I think it's forced us to change tactically. One of my reasons why I don't care about first 11s, because I think first 11s present themselves to you in the moments, and it's just obvious, right? It becomes obvious who should play. I do think the discussion around 9 and centre forward is a deeper one. I think we all have views on what a centre forward is, and I'm not sure it matches the manager's views, because I almost think we don't play with a centre forward. We have people that have primary roles to arrive in certain areas, in different phases of attack. I think Trossard and Merino, I don't think there's much differentiation apart from the height aspect, the ability to go long, but they both rotate into midfield. Declan Rice often found himself centre forward in this game, as he did against Madrid, and he goes past Trossard. So it's all about, when someone drops, who goes past. If anything, the couple of recent things which I found, which I think may be better for us, is that we're keeping Saka and Martinelli higher more often. And I think that's really important, because they're our 2 goal scorers, and they're the 2 young, bright things, whereas everyone else is rotating a little bit centrally. And in second phase, Trossard finds himself zone 14, so does Rice around those areas. But as we're in build-up phase, they come a lot closer, they roll in, and I think that's key. And I think we developed a style on the balance, which I think works very well in Europe, So Merino and Trossard are super intelligent players to understand the spaces to go into that have been vacated, So one's physical, one's not. Trossard's got cute feet around the box, and when he's on it, he's really, really accurate and very clever. But they offer that midfielder profile that understands you can look after the ball in many different zones of the pitch. So I look at this. I'm looking at all the centre forwards we're looking at buying, and one thing they do, Elliot, is when they get the ball, all of the ones we're looking at, they turn around and go to goal. Our centre forwards don't do that. When they get the ball, it goes backwards, it goes out, it goes wide. Watching all Gyökeres stuff, he gets it, he turns straight away. Sesko, get it, turn straight away. That's going to disconnect us from our team. We don't travel up the pitch together. So we all want this forward. Personally, I want wide forwards as well, but we all want this forward. But we have to remember that we're a unit at this moment in time. So integrating a centre forward in our minds, that we score more goals. That's great once we're there, but there's phases before we get there. And how Arteta does it at the moment, one of his tricks is he overloads central areas to allow us to build. So it's going to be interesting integration, whoever we go for. But Trossard and Merino are smart. They can do this job. But I think sometimes you have to think about 9s as different. And there is a 9 role. I'm not saying there is no 9. There is a 9 role, but maybe not as we all envisage it or we all grew up watching football. It's different for this guy so far.
I need to ask Poorly Drawn Arsenal if he will do us a solid and draw a picture of like a Mikel Merino, Jose Mourinho hybrid, and we can call it Mikel Merino and put it on a mug or something.
Everyone tells me I keep doing it. Didn't I?
That man
I say
scarred you,
Mourinho?
Clive. Yeah, that man scarred you bad.
Marino.
He's in
Marino. Well, yeah, I could just summarize that by
put a
saying
little accent over the end and tell him to make it Marino.
I apologize. Yeah. I apologize.
No,
I should just summarize.
Like, you could apologize to me about mispronouncing names.
I'll tell you the player that is our centre forward. It's Saka. Saka is our centre forward. He's our most. You say Liverpool centre forward. Who is it? Let's be honest. Who says
it's
centre
Mohamed
forward?
Salah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So how you define that forward, right?
Yeah.
We all know where Saka's at. When Saka plays, mate, he's like a centrifugal force, bringing everything to him.
Yeah.
That's what Salah does. No matter where he stands, the game comes to him, right? So Saka's our centre forward. The rest, we're all support actors, the rest of us on that team. As simple as that.
All right, our next segment will be on Oli Watkins. I'm kidding. Just a point that not all of us know how to pronounce names right. Well, look, and I want to be clear, I'm not doing apologia for not signing a striker. Like, we should have done it the last 2 windows at a minimum, and we have to do it this summer. And I'm going a bit Wenger here, like, signing a striker will kill Mikel Merino. Like, you can't live that way. I'm just saying it's weird how things work out because, you know, you sometimes find in the short term a solution. I think Tim has pointed this out brilliantly on this pod. When you get injuries and when you lose players, you find something that works for a bit, but it tends not to work longer than a bit, right? When Ødegaard went out, we played okay for a bit, and then his absence started to hurt us. And like, I think Merino is working for now, and maybe a bit is all we need. 3 more games, 2 against PSG and 1 in the final, and that'll be fine, thank you. The idea that it's going to carry us to a title in the Premier League over 38 games, I think, is a nonsense. So we'll just have to see. And it is worth pointing out, by the way, as great as he's been in the Champions League, and since he's come back in, our Premier League form is crap. It is for you to decide if our Premier League form is crap because we've been focused on other stuff, or our Premier League form is crap because we are a team missing players and uneven at the moment. That isn't, you know, for me to be able to say right now. I think the sad thing, guys, I think there's going to be a lot of post hoc analysis, which is going to be, if we win the Champions League, we'll be drunk and we'll be happy, and everyone will say the Premier League form was nothing. It didn't matter. We weren't focused on it. If we don't win the Champions League, people will say, well, we were just terrible in the Premier League down the stretch and no one was really talking about it, but we've been bad. So I think people are going to revise their view on these games, right? Based on what we do in Europe. And that's not really fair. You either believe we're playing poorly in the Premier League right now because we're not focused on it, or you believe we are playing poorly in the Premier League right now because we have some issues. I'm open to either explanation, but I don't think you get to choose the explanation after you see what happens in Europe, if you follow my logic. And Tim, I do want to talk about this as a bad game because I'm going to go on record and say this is the worst I've seen Arsenal play this season. The worst. Because I think this is an Arsenal that, not an Arsenal that got caught. Like, there are a lot of people, I see people saying, oh, it's typical of our season so far. They scored 2 really low percentage goals and they get a draw. This is not typical of our season. Do you want me to explain in 4 stats how atypical this is? We lost the XG battle at home to Palace quite substantially, 1.7 to 1.2 roughly. We never do that. They had more touches in our penalty box. That never happens. Okay? They outshot us, and they won the duels battle by double. They won almost twice as many duels as we won. So we were out-dueled, out-touched in the box, outshot, and out-XG'd. And I am confident, I don't know this for sure, but I'm pretty confident, outside of the games with 10 men like against City, that has never happened to us this season. Those are things to me that indicate not that we failed to execute or, oh, we played them off the park, but they scored from 2 half chances. Those are things that indicate to me that the effort wasn't there. And Mikel Arteta's first comment in the presser is, we weren't at the level, our standards dropped. And I totally agree with Mikel Arteta. To be the best out of possession team in world football, to be the best 4-4-2 shape out of possession, to be the best pressing team, that's not just about talent, that's about focus and application. And I really, really believe this is a game, more than any other in the recent run, that is indicative of a lack of focus and execution. I'm curious if you agree, Tim, and if the data that I just presented and Mikel's comments align with what you saw, that this game was one of the rare examples of his team not being up for the task at hand.
Yeah, definitely. The thing you'd say about Arteta's Arsenal is that the fundamentals are always there.
Well said.
Basically. And they weren't there this time. And when David Raya is dropping crosses and being a bit erratic, you know something's a bit off kilter. And to your point, our two best players on the night are probably Trossard and Kiwior, and why is that? Like, one of them has to be focused because he's not in the first choice 11. Like, as well as he's done recently, if there was a miracle and Gabriel was cured tomorrow, he'd start against PSG, and that's the end of it. So, like, who played the best? The guys who got something to play for. So I think that definitely tells you that the focus wasn't there. And I guess I kind of feel two ways about it, in that I do feel disappointed. I do feel a bit annoyed that we just haven't got like, I do think we'll finish second, but like I've been saying this for a month. Like, I think we'll finish second, but like, we've had ample opportunity for it to be. Actually, we've had opportunity for it to be a mathematical certainty by this point, and it's just annoying as well, because it just brings something into that Bournemouth game between the two PSG legs.
Yes.
Which,
so can I just stop you for a second?
Yeah.
The thing that frustrates me very, very little about this game does, but you win this game, you can have the Bournemouth game literally not matter.
Mm-hmm.
It still doesn't matter much, but now Mikel has to think about it. He has to look at it and say, based on how the other Premier League games go this weekend and based on the numbers between us and six, that like, it's such a remote possibility. But Tim, we had the chance to make it not matter at all. And now I think he has to at least consider that that's a game you might need to win.
Yeah, exactly. And that like, at this stage of the season, like, I'm very much one for, keep players' sharpness up and things like that, and actually resting them carries a risk as well. But like, that game, I'd have been like, throw it in the bin. Like, have them all on the bench, but don't even bring them on, kind of thing, other than in the interest of like sharing minutes around, like really throw that game in the bin, which I don't think we can quite do now. But I guess the other thing that's annoying about it as well is, after a while, I think it becomes difficult to turn the tap on and off. Like, I think it becomes difficult to go, we're going to play at 60% this game and then 100% of this game. I kind of think that over an extended period of time, and this is an extended period of time now, like we're drawing a lot of games, I think it just becomes more difficult to do that. And just little things like how we start against PSG, like, slightly concerns me now. Like, what does that first 20 minutes look like when we've had, and I have to say as well, in a weird way, perhaps the Ipswich game was bad in that respect. Not bad, but it wasn't a good tee up, because, like, honestly, I think a training session would have been much harder than that. Like, they were playing around cones, particularly when Ipswich went to 10 men. Like, that was really like, playing the dinner ladies, to be honest, at Colney. Probably would have been a stiffer test, and maybe that's not exactly what we needed. And maybe we could have done with, like, like I said, we've got Liverpool, Newcastle to play yet. Maybe like Newcastle at home or something, might have done us a little bit better, even though I'm not sure I want Joelinton and Bruno Guimaraes anywhere near our players for a Champions League semi-final, but maybe just not quite having that intensity. And yeah, that does worry me slightly. The turning the tap on and off. I do think Arteta has a point. I don't think it's just a long-term, bigger picture thing that he wants total effort in every single game. So I guess that concerns me a bit. But at the same time, against Madrid, who was sitting there thinking, but we only drew Brentford at the weekend. Like, that was not in anyone's minds. I guess the weirder thing about this one is we don't have a game this weekend. So, I do, don't get me wrong, I think people's thoughts have already turned to Tuesday. But yeah, it's a slight concern. It's a slight annoyance, but I think I'll get over it.
Yeah, and I mean, for people, by the way, who are saying, you think it's the worst game of the season, what about Newcastle away? What about West Ham at home? Just to put in perspective how different this is from how we usually play. Newcastle away, terrible game, right? Not the League Cup game, the league game. We doubled their XG, we outshot them, and we outtouched them in the box. The West Ham home game, we were terrible. Out XG'd them, outshot them 20-5, had 42 touches in the box to their 11. So now put it in perspective to this game again. Lost the XG battle substantially, got outshot, got out-touched in the box, had half the duels they had. Again, it just feels so out of step. I want to talk a couple of the performances that seem very uncharacteristic. But before we move on, I want to just stay on that lack of focus issue. And I do, Clive, just want to get your thoughts on second, on top five, and on the extent to which there's a need to look down rather than look ahead.
Yeah, sorry to hold you on that point.
Please, it's important.
I think to win a game of football, you need an edge, right? You need a physical and an emotional edge, and you need to commit to the moment. And Tim's a historian. Arsenal was formed in 1886 today, Tim. Played one of the first games in 1887 on Plumpton Common. Next Tuesday is the second time in our history we're going to be in a Champions League final. The moment you see Declan Rice jumping out of a tackle with Lerma, I think right in front of you, Tim, looking down, you know this is not the same Declan Rice smashing Valverde in the box and smashing Asensio in the box against Real Madrid. That basically he got his ankle kicked off trying to win us a game. It's just, honestly, just wipe your minds. We were nowhere near it, and they knew it, and they out-physicaled us. They won all the battles when they needed to. We tried to control it by passing the ball. But by passing the ball, you have to have passing with purpose, and passing with purpose, you need movement with purpose. And if you're Martin Elliot, who's ran himself into the ground for literally 3 weeks in a row and played 90 minutes almost for the last couple of weeks almost, and was running the 93rd minute in the Bernabeu just a few days ago, and you've got Kiwior on the ball and there's space in behind, I can come short, I can go long. If I go long, I hurt them. If I go long, I might hurt myself like I did at Newcastle away. I missed 4 or 5 weeks this season. I'm coming short, mate. I'm knocking it off. They get more confident. What do? They creep onto us. They win the territory. They control the parts of the game they want to do. It's just football. It's a contest. To have a contest, you have to hurt the opposition. You have to move. You got to commit yourself emotionally. I say this is very important, emotional commitment, and there is a physical commitment prepared to put myself in danger to win a ball, and we were not. And I don't blame them. I really don't blame them. This is unique in our history. It really is. And we could have the best moment in all our lives, and I don't want it ruined. Crystal Palace at home. You know, I could tell me the game that Gabriel done his hamstring, and I can barely remember. Was it Brentford when he's running back? Was it? I can't remember the game. But it wasn't.
The only person who
it?
knows that stuff is Tim. I don't remember.
But it tells you how unimportant it was, right? It just wasn't important after a rest, you know. And we are for all Kiwior's done, we are not better without having that guy in our team.
Of course.
You know? And the others got that message. Saka, mate, come on. Mate, Saka just stood there on that right-hand side, barely moved. He had 18 touches in half an hour. That's not him. You know, so it's difficult to scratch it. There's a few little things that I see that are interesting from performance point of view, but no conclusions. It's all about Tuesday.
Yep. I agree with a lot of the things you both have said there. I know, look, I would like to finish second. I don't think it's critical, but I think finishing behind City in particular would just feel bad, you know? And here is the hard part. If you win the Champions League and we finish fifth by goal difference alone, I'm going to change that. If we finish ninth and win the Champions League, we'll be back in the Champions League next season and we'll have won the Champions League. So I don't actually care. I think full focus has to be on the Champions League now. At the risk of repeating myself, I just think you put yourself in a tough position now by dropping points in dumb games where you shouldn't, that people's willingness to accept this run of form is going to be entirely decided by what you do in Europe. And that's just reality. Look, we got to talk David Raya. We got to talk about, I think 1 or 2 performances that maybe weren't at the fogging of standards. I do have a Martin Odegaard question for both of you. I just want to make this one point. Like, for the people who would say, they scored from 2 sort of worldy goals, it's typical of our season. But I think both the goals they scored from are actually indicative of the lack of focus and concentration. Because the goal they get from the corner, the Eze free kick, volley is brilliant. But Mikel was livid. Jover was livid because he was out there and they were saying, go get him. And no one was switched on to go get him. And on their goal, the Mateta goal, it's a brilliant finish. It's a Saliba error, but it's also a Raya error. Where's Raya? Why isn't he covering back to give Saliba a ball to go back to? And I think John McKenzie did a good video on some of these Saliba errors that are actually also caused by Raya. And Mateta even said after the game, we looked at Raya's positioning, or maybe it was Glasner who said, someone said, we looked at Raya's positioning. We knew he was far out of his goal, and that was in our mind. I think Raya was not in this game, basically. So we'll come to that in a moment. I should tell you about some brands, because if I don't, then you're going to go, I don't know what brands to patronize, and now I don't know what to do with my life. And that's fair. I can't leave you in that position. But we are going to talk Raya. We're going to talk Ødegaard. We're going to talk a little bit about that and one or two other things. So first things first, the one that everybody asks about, NordVPN.com. NordVPN is an app you put on any device that lets you stream where you want to stream. You can watch streaming shows literally in some cases a year before they're available in your country, because some of these seasons come out earlier. I'm not legally allowed to name some of the shows, but let me just say there's one kids show that my kids love that I was able to watch the new episodes before I could watch them here using NordVPN. You can watch the match reviews of the day show. You can watch those geo-locked videos where a commentator is saying something dumb about Arsenal and you want to get all enraged about it, or maybe even, imagine this, saying something clever about Arsenal. There's also threat protection. So if you're on those dodgy links, now you're protected. It works on any device, and we've got a phenomenal value from Nord. Grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan, plus 4 additional months on top. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. NordVPN.com/ArsenalVision. Do it now. And this podcast is a paid advertisement, or this particular section, not the whole podcast, but this section is a paid advertisement from BetterHelp. BetterHelp is an online therapy. It's therapy that happens to be online. The number of people that benefit from therapy and would benefit from therapy is certainly not matching the number of people doing therapy. I think we can agree on that. And I would say if you can go to an office and meet with a therapist in person, it is a wonderful experience. I did it, and I cannot say enough positive things about it. But I understand that there is friction in that makes it difficult or impossible for some people to do it. Scheduling, childcare. Maybe you can't drive, like my mother. Does that mean she should just never do therapy again? BetterHelp is access to therapy. It's access to a therapist. And what if you go to that office and that therapist just isn't the right one for you? I was talking to someone recently who said therapy didn't work for them because they didn't click with their therapist. And then they just never made the effort to find a new one. BetterHelp is a great way to get access to therapy and build a support network that can help you navigate difficult times. I cannot recommend therapy highly enough. And if you want to do it with BetterHelp, there's over 5,000 therapists in the UK already. BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise in mental health. You can build your support system with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/vision. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/vision. Do it now. And Shopify is the e-commerce platform that lets you build the best e-commerce site possible without needing to know how to code. You put the pictures in, you put the description in. It does the stuff like, hey, here's a design that suits the industry you're in. And here's how, when someone checks out, it'll say, did you need to add this to your cart? Or you left something in your cart, or it'll take care of the shipping, or it'll take care of the taxes. And you can't be an e-commerce site anymore if you're not selling on like Instagram and Facebook and all those platforms. So it integrates with those. It is an affordable, easy way to build a site that looks like you're running a major business, even if you're just selling your artwork or the thing you're great at. So established in 2025 has a nice ring to it. Sign up for a $1 per month trial. How about that? At shopify.com/ArsenalVision, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ArsenalVision, all lowercase, to start selling with Shopify today. Shopify.com/ArsenalVision. Do it now. And finally, but not least importantly, very importantly, if you're hiring, Indeed is a place where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Indeed is a job site where you post your jobs and you don't have to go to a million other sites. I think the best thing we can do on the internet is declutter our lives, de-and-shitify our lives, find a platform that gives us everything we need, and use that one platform. And that's the entire benefit of Indeed. One place to post your jobs and get more results. And not just that, if you want to promote a job, sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page, and it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. And there are no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts. You only pay for results. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners to this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ArsenalVision. Just go to Indeed.com/ArsenalVision right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/ArsenalVision. Terms and supply. Hiring Indeed. Selling Indeed. Send them that.
Indeed.
Okay. David Raya, player of the season candidate. WPOTY in this game. Worst player of the year. You get where I'm going? This was a bad David Raya game. I don't know what to tell you. It was all bad. He wasn't concentrating. He wasn't claiming crosses. He wasn't distributing well. He did some of the David Raya stuff that's excellent. That throw to Martinelli where he sprints away, brilliant. brilliant. He did a couple of good things. He sure did. But boy, oh boy, did he do a couple of bad things. And Clive, I almost feel like I said this on the instant reaction. This is one of those games where you wish your backup keeper was usable, because maybe David Raya's just played too much football under high pressure this season. And it's a position where you need focus. And maybe he could have just used a chance to be like, you know what? Go get your head in a book. Go get your head in a movie. Go get your head in a video game. Take the night off. You don't need the pressure of Premier League football right now. You need to be thinking about locking back in for PSG. Thankfully, he's got a week to get his mind right. But yeah, there's no backup keeper, so there's no one we can turn to. So he plays and he plays poorly. I'm going to say I have absolutely no concerns, but he did have the throw out to Saliba that led to the goal in Madrid. Do you have any concerns about Bozo moments creeping in, or are you just totally fine with him?
Yeah, I think you've explained it well. I think it's mental fatigue with him. He has played a lot of football. He's never hardly ever had a break. He did have a period where he was playing for Spain as well, so not in the last international break, but the ones previous, because they had an injury of Unai Simon. So basically, he was playing 2 internationals as well. So he's had a really fantastic year. Can you imagine the season without him? I don't want to think about it, right? So, but he had a down game in this game, and I know that people are. I may even say, don't worry about this game. We weren't committed. We weren't physical. Blah blah blah. Still doesn't mean I'm not a little bit worried. And one of the things that worried me was Raya, not because of how he played, because we know he can sharpen up, but how he's now opened himself up to the PSG analysts, which I don't like, right? With some weaknesses. I don't think we look good from set pieces in this game. I think Tim was a bit closer, particularly in the first half, just looking at that end. But Tim, as that ball was flashing across the box, I didn't feel he was going to come and get it. I didn't feel he was engaged with the crosses. And normally, when the ball goes anywhere in the air, he's just there, mate. And so I haven't got my distances right from looking live, but I didn't feel his presence in the area on crosses. And although there was a few people there that, particularly in the comments, saying that sometimes we're protecting Saliba on these errors, but I need to explain to those people and to you why the Madrid thing really bothered me, because we've just scored a goal in the Bernabeu. It's gone into his hands and he's running out, right? So he's running out to throw the ball out. He tries to throw the ball out to Rice, and Rice says no, puts his arm back and says no, just no. The coaching message is for Rice to say, don't just say no, say slow down, stop. This is the coaching message. Then he sprints over to Saliba's side, and Saliba says, you know what, he's coming towards me. Let me split. So I split to create a distance between me and the goalkeeper. And he throws it to me. So I now think I must have a load of space because he's giving me the ball. I've not checked my shoulders, mistake, not scanned. I must have space, he's giving me the ball. And then what? And then he obviously gets robbed and it goes in our net. This is a message. Mate, slow down. You're the controller. You see everything. He looks a bit skittish to me at the moment. And that's I don't like it, because when he looks like that, he looks smaller than what he is. So he does need to sit down. 2 days of hot. They've all got 2 days off. Mate, 2 days off. Don't even pick up an orange. Just sit down on the settee. Do you know what I mean? And get your mind back into it to be fine. So he's just a little bit like that. And Saliba's the same. A little bit. Another player that's taken on a massive responsibility. So just a moment in the season, Elliot, and hopefully they'll throw it away by next week.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, let's just give credit where it's due. The 2 goals they did score, Eze and Mateta do brilliantly on them. Those are 2 great players, and they did some great special things.
Mate, off the post, off the bar, right? What
can you do?
Yeah. Right, and
and I have to admit, it's hard not to like Mateta. Like, I was furious when that went in, but he's a likable dude. Adam Morton was interesting to get a look at too. I think he had some good stuff, but also struggled at times. A bit of a mixed bag for him, but he's a good player. The Saliba thing is tough. I think he's such a cool, calm character. When was the last time you saw Saliba just hack it out in the touch? It's not who he is. And I don't know that he has alarm bells. I don't think alarm bells ring for him. And maybe he just every once in a while needs to have the alarm bells that tell him this is a situation that you're going to get punished for. But ultimately, I don't have too much concern with him. I think Raya, to your point, Clive, just managed the situation better. Tim, I think it's worth a Martin Odegaard chat. First of all,
again,
can I just ask you a super quick question?
Yeah.
The way he gets bodied by Mateta after Saliba loses the ball, like, it's not a good look. I feel like he sort of slipped a bit. But it just feels, I hate to say this, right? But there's a moment that sometimes feels like a microcosm. If there's anything with Ødegaard right now, it feels like his power hasn't been there, his robustness. He feels frail in a way. And I realize that's reading body type too much. Like, I've seen small players be very strong. I mean, Bukayo Saka is not a big player, but he's extremely strong with his lower body. That was a bad look. Any quick thoughts just on Ødegaard getting bodied over by Mateta on that move?
Yeah, I think just symptomatic of the team and the performance. I think a fully on it Ødegaard, that probably wouldn't have happened. I mean, Mateta is a big guy, by the way. He's one of those, like,
not to me, but I could see how to other people.
He's one of those. I said this a bit. I mean, he's not as big as Courtois, but certainly not as tall. But broadness, he's one of those. I think particularly when he comes on as a sub, and they've had Eddie Nketiah kind of, manfully toiling away, like quite a spindly guy. And then Mateta comes on and you go, oh, wow, like this guy looks like a linebacker, So, like, to be fair, I think a lot of Mateta will body plenty of people. I just wanted to add on the Saliba thing as well. This is complete speculation, but I just wonder if that's where maybe Gabriel might have been a bit more vocal, maybe in those scenarios, both against Real Madrid and here, whether... I don't know, but I wonder whether Gabriel, as a bigger character than someone like Kiwior, more established in the team, might have been screaming at him a little bit. But no, I don't put that much on that particular incident, no more so than anything else we've seen from Ødegaard so far this season.
Yeah. Well, then let's get to the rest of it. And I just want to put some context around this. Like, Martin Odegaard, at his worst, is not a bad player, because Martin Odegaard does so many things that you need a player to do. And I will say this for him. He had two really lovely moments where I think we'd be talking about him in a more positive light. One is the scoop ball that finally worked to Timber for the cutback to Martinelli for the goal that was disallowed, because what do you know? They finally could tell that it was over the end line. Hey, they had the camera angle for it. Amazing. And then the other one for the Saka shot that's blocked. That's well saved. Really, really well saved. That there's a lovely Ødegaard ball into Martinelli. He spins away and gets that ball into Martinelli, and Martinelli puts it across, and Saka hits it beautifully, and it's just really well saved by Henderson. But Scott does a stat called goal probability added. It takes into account all of your actions: your passing, your dribbling, your shooting, your losses of possession, your dribbled past, all that, and comes up with a goal probability added based on the net of that total. Martin Odegaard is usually one of our top 3 or 4 players, even in his bad games. He was dead last among all players that played in this game, period. Literally dead last, including David Raya, by the way. So I mean, your eyes aren't lying to you. A couple things you should know about Martin Odegaard this season. His XG per 90 is down. His XA per 90 is down. His shots per 90 are down. His shot creating actions per 90 are down. His goal creating actions per 90 are down. His passes into the penalty area per 90 are down. These things are real. What you're seeing with your eyes is real. It doesn't mean he's bad. It doesn't mean he's lost. And I am of the belief, and I'm just going to put this out there. I'll nail my colors to the mast with this one. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I think it is entirely related to physical manifestations of the injury he went through, and that when he gets a summer off, he might even get a cleanup surgery. Wouldn't surprise me at all. But when he gets a summer off, I think he's going to look right next season. I think we'll see more of the things that Martin Odegaard has shown us since he's been at Arsenal. I don't think those things are the mirage. I think this is the outlier. But we'd be lying if we said it wasn't working, if we said it was working right now, and it's not. So I'm wondering, Tim, this was a game where a lot of players were off their best and didn't have their edge. But this one feels more relevant with Ødegaard because it feels more like a continuation. And just the number of times a player was either sprinting away and he didn't make the pass, or he just passed into touch. It was another uncomfortable game for Ødegaard. I'm wondering how you contextualize this and think about where he's at for us right now.
Yeah, it is a bit, it's more than a bit concerning. I think it is concerning at this stage. And I think we're probably holding on to the idea that there's physically something there, whether it's the ankle not recover. Like, he's lost power. We can all see that. We can see, even if you take away his performances, you can see he's lost weight as well. I think that was actually maybe even before the injury. That was quite obvious that the cheekbone's a bit more defined. this season.
We want to
And
see cheekbones, but there can be too much cheekbone. Let's just put it that way.
yeah, like he could cut glass with those things at the
Yeah.
moment. And
Mhm.
yeah, like there's definitely some of that. And I think most of us are probably thinking there's got to be something like that. I know you referenced it. I can't remember if it was on the instant reaction or the last pod, but like I saw a tweet from someone as well talking about how those kind of ankle injuries affect you, how they affect like your elasticity and your power. Because that's what he's lacking. Like, he's no less involved, is he? Like, I
No.
don't know the data. I bet his touches per 90 aren't down or aren't down very much.
No, and his passes are similar. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think you're right on that. I'll double check it real quick right now.
like
So from a passing standpoint, he is playing almost an identical number of
yeah,
passes he played last season. And from a touches standpoint, he has, I mean, 2 fewer touches from instead of 67.8, he is 65.8.
yeah. So like that, his level of involvement is very, very similar. And it's not like he's giving the ball away every 2 minutes. Like, he's not a disaster zone. It's just that final action isn't quite there. And I do think a lot of that is ball striking, in particular when he shoots at goal. His ball striking's far less. Like, he never had like a hammer of a left foot. But remember, like, that goal he scored against Spurs 2 seasons ago. I think he scored a very similar one at Newcastle. Like, don't get me wrong, p-rollers along the floor, but I just couldn't picture him scoring those goals at the moment, or those kind of cutbacks to the penalty spot, which he'd side foot in pretty emphatically. Like, his connection with the ball is just not the same. And whether that's because of the ankle, whether that's, like weight loss, power loss, or whatever, it probably both. But at the same time, like, he's not, like I say, he's not a disaster area by any means. And I guess it's another thing where we have to look at reducing our dependence on him as well, because he's so critical in so many phases of the game. And maybe like a player like Zubimendi coming in can remove some of that like build up pressure, for example, or just give us another way, like another avenue to play through. I do think it's interesting. Like, I think I've said this before, but our attacking targets in terms of Williams, whether it's Gyökeres that we end up buying, like, a lot of it to me just seems to be about doing things a bit more quickly, maybe just being a bit more direct, maybe being a little less deliberate when we attack, rather than kind of taking 25 touches to get there. So, like, I think we need to diversify our threat a little bit anyway, but clearly there is something going on there. I do believe that players can just kind of come in and go out of form, without too many other caveats and explanations, but not necessarily at this level. I've had this argument with people before who are like, form is a thing, and I think it is, but I just almost always find there's something behind it when a player's form fluctuates at the elite level. I think below the elite, yeah, you get inconsistent, just like you get inconsistent teams like Crystal Palace. You get because you have inconsistent performers, but players like Ødegaard, maybe I'm in denial. I just don't believe they lose form for a whole season without there being a reason. But maybe I'm wrong about that. I'm really curious. I almost want to just fast forward to June and see the press release that says, Ødegaard's going to have some clean-up surgery on his ankle, and everyone goes, that was it. That was it. Because at the moment it's a bit of mystery and we're speculating a little bit.
Can we just not fast forward so far that we missed the parade? Like, could we fast forward to June 1st and then do the parade and then we can see? Clive, your thoughts?
Yeah. Remember the time he had the hip injury? Remember that time?
Mm-hmm.
We weren't sure, and he dropped away. We were all thinking, what's up with him? He's always good. Every game he's an 8 or 9, and then suddenly he revealed that the hip injury, and then once he was back, wasn't he? And that was that. It's obviously everyone can see he's not at his best. So can we just say that? Because otherwise people say to us that we make excuses. But everyone can see that he's not at his best. It could be health, or it could be pure fitness, mechanical fitness of the ankle. But what is more concerning is the future. And the future and the present, his influence in our game has lessened. He was literally our game. in all phases. It has lessened, and other people have risen to prominence. And they are now taking real fundamental roles in our build-up and last actions, while his role and influence has reduced. Forget about form. His influence has reduced. For Martin Odegaard, influence needs to be front and centre to who he is. He's our skipper. He's our club captain. He's our coach on the pitch. So his influence needs to be big. And it's not as big. And when you think about the players we potentially could be signing, let me just talk about Zubimendi for a minute. I know it's if buts and maybes, but you can see what I'm going to say there, can't you? We watched him play, and he's a playmaker, and he can do it. He can do it by himself. Waits to be seen, right? And so Martin Odegaard's influence will change, and we're going to want more different things. We're going to want a bit more shooting, a bit more last action stuff, and so things change. You've heard the manager mention about Merino, how he can play left 8 and right 8. Right? We all know that Ethan, once he grows up and gets sideburns, he is going to be a player that can play in that position, and he will shoot. And he's all about the last action. He's all about goals. So while you're not playing well, your influence is being reduced. Our dependence on you is being lessened. That's my bigger worry. He will come back. He's 25 years of age. He will come back to top level form. But the team has found different ways of playing. That could be a positive, because look where we are next Tuesday, Champions League semi-final, and a key man like that has barely played well for a long time. But for him, it could be a medium-term negative. When Kai Havertz comes back, he's partner in crime. I think that could change things. A new centre-forward comes in. How's he going to mesh with that player? So questions have been thrown up, and I think they're valid questions, discussions. You ain't got to kill somebody. We're just supporters, right? Just thinking about the future. And his lack of form was presented to us a potential different future. And that's a problem for him. Somebody who's a real lead actor. This is not someone who's a flower on the sideline. So it's going to be interesting to see how he goes, right? But once he starts playing well, trust me, we won't see nothing else. But it feels like a while since we've had that discussion, doesn't it?
Yeah, I agree. I think our squad building has made this harder too. Tim, bear with me here. If you think about our midfield construction, we play with one creator, one playmaker, and that's Martin Odegaard. And really, as we saw when he was out, we don't have another. You could say Ethan, but Ethan's not ready to play 8 for Arsenal yet. I'll say that. I think he's ready to play at a high level as he's shown. I think he can play at a high level more at winger because of the responsibilities there. I think midfield for Arsenal might just be one step too far right now. And maybe I'm not giving him his credit. But I guess what I'm saying from a squad building standpoint, outside of a 17, just turned 18-year-old, we don't have another playmaker. We've opted for big physical players. We opted for Kai as a sort of midfield player for us. Merino as a midfield player for us. Declan Rice as a midfield player for us. Partey and Jorginho, who are deeper. And I think part of the problem...
Sorry, when you say playmaker, I've got to... Do you mean like a number 10 Ozil type playmaker higher up the pitch? Because we have players who make the play from different areas, but we don't have too many of those guys.
I don't think we have a lot of last pass midfielders. You know what I mean? Think about the ball Ødegaard played to Leo in the Porto home leg, right? Takes 4 players out and Leo's in, and we get the goal that helps us get through that.
High up creator.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. Because you're right. We have Bukayo Saka is a massive, masterful playmaker who would have broken the assist record had he not gotten injured this season. So I take your point, and it's well made. But you see where I'm going with that, right? The profile that Ødegaard is unique in our squad. We don't have another, a Bruno Fernandes type. We don't have an Eberechi Eze. We don't keep those kind of players. Ryan Cherky, however you want to say it. And as a result, we have to just keep using Ødegaard because Ødegaard is unique in the world maybe for how much running he does, the way he orchestrates press, the way he connects, comes deep, connects, progresses. Bruno Fernandes, wonderful player with some of the eye-catching things he does, but he plays for himself. It's part of the problem for United. What I will say about Ødegaard is in his worst games, he's doing some of the stuff you have to do to be as good as we are out of possession. So he's a lovely player in terms of his commitment and his coaching on the pitch and all of that. But do you think that the problem for Mikel, football waits for no one. This is probably just form. It's probably just the injury, and he'll probably be fine next season. But if the assists and the goals are leaving his game and that end producty stuff is leaving his game, and I don't think that's the case, but if it is, how long can you wait? I just wonder, Tim, if you think it has been a bit of a miss that there isn't that other profile. Maybe that was meant to be Fabio Vieira. It did not work out. Maybe it is meant to be longer term Ethan Nwaneri. But is that part of the issue here? Just that Ødegaard's just got to play his way through it because there's no other profile like him in the squad that can help him get some time, you know?
Yeah, that's definitely it. I was thinking during the game yesterday, and actually in the build-up, I listened to Andrew doing his match preview, and he spoke to Dan from HLTCO, and he's talking about, because I think another part of this game is the players Palace brought in, some of them were playing for bigger inclusion on Saturday. Like they know they might not start, but trying to play their way into the starting lineup if they can, but at least trying to get off the bench. And, and he talked about Eddie's going to start this game for sure. And, Dan was talking about we've got 4 or 5 players at Palace outside the starting lineup who are like starting 11 quality. Because he was talking about, look, the reason we're a mid-table team, we have a good starting 11, but we don't have the depth beyond that. But he was kind of saying now Palace are probably at a stage where they've got 4 or 5 players like Eddie, who's kind of good Premier League starting level kind of player who doesn't usually. And I had that kind of idle thought that I was like, it's so strange how if we hadn't sold Eddie last summer, I'm not saying we shouldn't have, he'd be playing loads. Like he'd have been playing every game since February. He'd have played more for Arsenal this season than he has for Palace. And isn't that just like sod's law in terms of we had him on our bench all that time doing nothing, and then we go, okay, we're going to sell him. And then all of a sudden, all our strikers get injured. And it's the same for Smith Rowe and Vieira. Now, I think it's fair to say we took a risk letting them both go. We definitely left ourselves a bit light there. And I think people said that even like without hindsight. But it's the same for Smith Rowe and Vieira now, isn't it? It's like you'd have played a lot of football this season, you guys, like if you were still here. Like Fabio Vieira, particularly, I do think Fabio Vieira was intended to be that player. I think he was intended to be someone who can play in Saka and Ødegaard's position. And, between covering those 2 roles, he'd probably get a reasonable amount of football. And it didn't happen because both of those players stayed fit. The second Vieira leaves, they both get injured. So that's just that, there has been, I don't know if you'd call it bad luck, because I'm sure people would push back on that and say, well, actually, we left ourselves light in those positions. And I kind of think that's fair enough. I do kind of think teams and clubs take gambles like that all the time. Like no squad is perfect. And it's just the case that sometimes you get away with it. Like the Invincible squad, guys, not as big as you remember it. It was like 15, 16 really good players, but not an awful lot beyond that, but we just didn't have to rely on anything beyond that level of depth. So it's definitely a wrinkle, and it's one where it's probably symptomatic of the season where we've taken a little risk with something, and we have been unbelievably harshly punished to the absolute maximum for it. And I guess the lesson is that with the way the fixture schedule is now, maybe clubs at our level just can't afford to take those risks because injuries are going to happen more often. And, having like 20 starting 11 capable players is definitely something we're going to have to do. And that is definitely a profile we're lacking. Absolutely.
Yeah. Clive, final thought on that?
Yeah. My head's in the transfer window, as you know, and I'm looking at people coming in, and I was thinking it through, and people immediately then start to think about who's going to play, who's not going to play. One thing that we have not done well, even going back to the Invincible days, is that we've not been able to manage multiple competitions in one season very well. That year, we know the drill. We got Wayne bridged. We should have won that. We got caught between the FA Cup semi-final, and we didn't quite have the ability to rotate, and we got bridged, and that was that, right? And we should have had a European Cup in our pocket already, right? So in the last 3 years, we've struggled with injury at the critical moments. But let's be honest, this season, one of the big issues was we didn't manage the impact of the extra Champions League games and the League Cup games in January. And it cost us injury to our forwards. it's been a problem for this Arteta regime for a long time because of where we started from with our squad rebuild and where we're heading to. And for me, the remit for next season is we need to be not just doing well in the league or doing well in the Champions League or an FA Cup. We need to be doing well in all three. And we need to be comfortable making those changes and having the depth. We really do need to get to that stage. That's the next phase of this project now. We need to have not just win a trophy, we need to be competitive on 2 or 3 competition routes. And whatever you say about the 115 crew up the road, they've been able to do that for the last half a decade. Forget how they got there. We know the drill, but they've been able to manage 2 or 3, leagues and trebles and FA Cups coming in and League Cups coming in. We've not been able to do that, and so that's the next step for us, mate. It really is. And we're going to have to completely change our thought process about what our first 11 is, and really open our minds up to having 2 or 3 senior guys fighting for one role. I can see it online last night. People having those discussions around centre midfield, for example. And we just got to get used to it. No, we want to be this good. If our ambition is to be the best team in Europe or in the top 4, we ain't going to do that with, the squad depth we have right now, and the quality we have right now. So we have to go again. It's going to be harsh, but we got to do it. That's where I think we need to be.
And I'd say just on that, Clive, like maybe what we're seeing from Jakub Kiwior at the moment, maybe next season when Gabriel says, I've got a bit of a hamstring strain, but I'm fine. Maybe Arteta's a bit firmer on that and says, actually, we got another really good left centre back here who probably needs the games anyway. And, we hear this a lot, don't we, from Arteta? Like he wants to play and I know he values that. And I think I understand why he values that. But at the same time, I do think a learning point for him is to take a firmer hand and say, actually, I know you want to play. I want you to want to play, but it's my job to manage that because I want you playing. I don't want you missing for 4 months, basically. So keep telling me you want to play, keep that appetite. But you know what? It's my job to manage that. And I'm not always going to make you happy when I tell you to sit down.
Yeah. Well, one thing that could make you happy. Look, I know there's some people that just don't care what the data says, and that's fair. But data can be helpful to just kind of check your emotion. So Scott's put his new simulation out. Doesn't mean it knows the future. This is just what probability says. We are 96%, 94%, something like that, to finish second. And based on his simulation, 0.0% to finish outside the top 5. Now, obviously, that's not correct. There is some percentage of likelihood we could fit, but you see what I'm saying? Like when he runs his simulation, whatever it is, 30,000 times, in those 30,000 times, something like 2 out of the 30,000, we finish outside the top 5. My point is simply, however worried we feel, those worries are likely, arguably, an emotional reaction. I do think, by the way, we're smart about recognizing that injuries derailed our season a bit. But I think we're not always smart at realizing what the second order effects of injuries are. If we had fewer injuries, these games between the Champions League could feature stronger rotated sides, right? So suddenly you're playing rested squad players who are better, right? Because you don't have to play injured players. I guess what I'm saying is we're trying to get through the Champions League and the Premier League with big injuries. We're getting by in the Champions League, but we're seeing the knock-on effects in the Premier League. And how much are the knock-on effects? Over our last 9 games, we have 14 points. That is a 59-point pace over our last 9 games in the Premier League. No one's going to pretend that's acceptable. But I think that's where the injuries have showed up as we have prioritized the Champions League. So it's going to be all focused on PSG now. I think maybe the only upshot of the Bournemouth game, maybe mattering even a little bit, is I do think this is the time of the season where maybe playing every 3 days is helpful for these players. They're so in that cadence and they so need that intensity that I don't know. I don't know that it's the worst thing. Obviously, that's where injuries can happen, but when would we ever have bad injury luck? So I think the goal right now is just focus on PSG, and the Premier League will work out as it works out. I do think that we've got a lot of transfer news starting to percolate. I'm not ready to think about that. We'll do power rankings tomorrow, and we'll wind our way towards transfer stuff as it feels relevant. Maybe there's a chance to do a bit of that I don't know, probably after PSG. But I will tell you that we're going to do a transfer update daily for patrons over the summer. Now, just so we're clear, it may be the first 15 minutes of it. If we're putting out a Patreon episode, we might just incorporate it. But every day there'll be something on the transfer news because I think it's going to be an absolutely bananas summer for transfer news. And that transfer daily will also cover some of the other big news of other club stuff. And we'll get fun guests to rotate around on that. Some of it'll be solo stuff because, sometimes Clive just needs to have his say. We can't have me asking him dumb questions. He just needs to have a say. Give to the fundraiser and maybe you win a ticket. It's the last day and a half to do that. The Julien Laurent pod will be out soon. Don't be mad at all the nice stuff he says about PSG. That was his job. Clive, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Tim, thank you.
My pleasure as always.
My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me everywhere. Just do that. That seems like the sensible thing to do. Thanks for being wonderful, beautiful people whom we love. And I guess this is where it gets real. When I say we love you, we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, PSG no.